عليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. لا إله إلا هو الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أقدم إليك بين يدي كل نفس ولمحة ولحظة وخطرة وطرفة يطرف بها أهل السماوات والأرض وكل شيء هو في علمك كائن أو قد كان. أقدم إليك بين يدي ذلك كله. لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء. وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده. لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. وإن تبدوا ما في أنفسكم أو تخفوه يحاسبكم به الله ويغفر لمن يشاء ويعذب من يشاء والله على كل شيء قدير. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه ومؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين آمين. شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة وأولو العلم قائما بالقسط. وأنا أشهد بما شهد الله به وأشهد الله على ذلك وأستودع الله هذه الشهادة وهي لي عند الله وديعة أسأله حفظها حتى يتوفاني عليها إن دين عند الله الإسلام. قل اللهم مالك الملك اللهم مالك الملك تؤتي الملك من تشاء وتنزع الملك ممن تشاء وتعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء بيدك الخير تولج الليل في النهار وتولج النهار في الليل وتخرج الحي من الميت وتخرج الميت من الحي وترزق من تشاء بغير حساب. رحمن الدنيا والآخرة ورحيمهما تعطي من تشاء منهما وتمنع من تشاء وأنت ترحمنا فرحمنا رحمة تغنينا بها عن رحمة من سواك. اللهم اقضي عنا الدين واغنينا من الفقر.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
قل الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم يا عظيم السلطان يا قديم الإحسان يا دائم النعم يا كثير الجور يا واسع العطاء يا خفي اللطف صل يا ربي على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم وارض عن الصحابة أجمعين. اللهم لك الحمد شكرا ولك المن فضلا وأنت ربنا حقا ونحن عبيدك رقا وأنت لم تزل لذلك أحلى. يا ميسر كل عسير ويا جابر كل كسير ويا صاحب كل فرير ويا مغني كل فقير ويا مقوي كل ضعيف ويا مأمن كل مخيف. يسر علينا كل عسير فتيسر العسير عليك يسر. اللهم يا من لا يحتاج إلى البيان والتفسير حاجاتنا كثير وأنت عالم بها وخبير. اللهم إني أخاف منك وأخاف من يخاف منك وأخاف من لا يخاف منك. اللهم بحق من يخاف منك نجنا من لا يخاف منك. اللهم بحق سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم احرسنا بعينك التي لا تنام وكنفنا بكنفك الذي لا يرام ورحمنا بقدرتك علينا فلا نحلك وأنت ثقتنا ورجاؤنا. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. عما يصفون، والحمد لله رب العالمين، عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. اللهم إنا نسألك زيادة في الدين وبركة في العمر وصحة في الجسد وسعة في الرزق وتوبة قبل الموت وشهادة عند الموت ومغفرة بعد الموت وعافية عند الحساب وآمنا من العذاب ونصيبا من الجنة وارزقنا النظر إلى وجهه الكريم. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. ربي أعوذ بك من حمزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. ربي أعوذ بك من حمزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. أفحسبتم أنما خلقناكم عبثا وأنكم إلينا لا ترجعون. فتعالى الله الملك الحق لا إله إلا هو رب العرش الكريم. ومن يدعو مع الله إلها آخر لا برهان له به فإنما حسابه عند ربي إنه لا يفلح الكافرون. وقل رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. وسبحان الله حين تمسون وحين تصبحون وله الحمد في السماوات والأرض وعشيا وحين تظهرون. يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي ويحيي الأرض بعد موتها وكذلك تخرجون. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. والله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر. سبحان الله عما يشركون. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. سلام على نوح في العالمين إنا كذلك نجزي المحسنين إنه من عبادنا المؤمنين. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتمم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتمم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتمم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك، وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيدا. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيدا. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيدا. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى انفصام الله والله السميع العليم. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى انفصام الله والله السميع العليم. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى انفصام الله والله السميع العليم. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبيا ورسولا. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبيا ورسولا. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبيا ورسولا. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. 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 اللهم إني أسألك من فجاءة الخير وأعوذ بك من فجاءة الشر. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت خلقتني وأنا عبدك وأنا على عهدك. أعوذ بك من شر ما صنعت وأبوء لك بنعمتك علي فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت لك توكلت وأنت رب العرش العظيم. ما شاء الله كان وما لم يشأ لم يكن ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير وأن الله قد أحاط بكل شيء علما. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من حكمة إن ربي على صراط مستقيم. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك أستغيث من عذابك أستجير. أصلح لي شأني كله ولا تكلني إلى نفسي ولا إلى أحد من خلقك طرفة عين. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهم والحزن وقهر الرجال. اللهم إني أسألك العافية في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في الدين ودنياي وأهلي ومالي. اللهم استر عوراتي وآمن رعاتي. اللهم احفظني من بين يدي ومن خلفي وعن يميني وعن شمالي ومن فوقي. وأعوذ بعظمتك أن أغتال من تحتي. اللهم أنت خلقتني وأنت تهديني وأنت تطعمني وأنت تسقيني وأنت تميتني وأنت تحييني وأنت على كل شيء قدير. أصبحنا على فطرة الإسلام وعلى كلمة الإخلاص وعلى دين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وعلى ملة أبينا إبراهيم حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين. اللهم بك أصبحنا وبك أمسينا وبك نحيا وبك نموت وعليك نتوكل وإليك النشور. أصبحنا وأصبح الملك لله والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم إني أسألك خير هذا اليوم فتحه ونصره ونوره وبركته وهداه. اللهم إني أسألك خير هذا اليوم خير ما فيه وخير ما قبله وخير ما بعده. وأعوذ بك من شر هذا اليوم وشر ما فيه وشر ما قبله وشر ما بعده. اللهم ما أصبح بي من نعمة أو بأحد من خلقك فمنك وحدك لا شريك لك فلك الحمد ولك الشكر على ذلك. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقي ورضا نفسي وزنة عرشي ومدار كلماتي. رضا نفسي وزنة عرشي ومدار كلماتي. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقي ورضا نفسي وزنة عرشي ومدار كلماتي. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقي ورضا نفسي وزنة عرشي ومدار كلماتي. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقي. سبحان الله العظيم. سبحان الله العظيم بحمده عدد خلقي ورضا نفسي وزنة عرشي ومدار كلماتي. سبحان الله عدد ما خلق في السماء. سبحان الله عدد ما خلق في الأرض. سبحان الله عدد ما بين ذلك. سبحان الله عدد ما هو خالق. الحمد لله عدد ما خلق في السماء. الحمد لله عدد ما خلق في الأرض. الحمد لله عدد ما بين ذلك. الحمد لله عدد ما هو خالق. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما خلق في السماء. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما خلق في الأرض. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما بين ذلك. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما هو خالق. الله أكبر عدد ما خلق في السماء. الله أكبر عدد ما خلق في الأرض. الله أكبر عدد ما بين ذلك. الله أكبر عدد ما هو خالق. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما خلق في السماء. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما خلق في الأرض. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما بين ذلك. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما هو خالق. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله، صلاة وسلام دائمان بدوام ملك الله، وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله، صلاة وسلام دائمان بدوام ملك الله، وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله، صلاة وسلام دائمان بدوام ملك الله، وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم ورضي الله عنكم. People of truth and religion from among the firmly stepped scholars who are sincere with God and His Messenger and of good counsel to the Muslims. Once they observe and take note of the common people's disinterest in knowledge and guidance, disinclination to uphold divine injunctions and obligatory devotions, inclinations to embark on forbidden activities, satisfaction with ignorance instead of knowledge, error instead of guidance, and falsehood instead of truth, together with being intent on indulging their appetites, pursuing ephemeral desires, giving precedence to this world over the next, and being content with the changeful and ephemeral rather than the substant and eternal, cannot decline to console and enjoy good upon them, uphold the commands of God among them, invite them to guidance and goodness, and repel them from evil, reprehensible things. They must exert themselves to the utmost in doing this and expand of their energy and effort to their very limits, for this is incumbent upon them, either in an individual or collectively binding manner. In this, they can never be excused, nor do they have the slightest permission to abandon it, since God taught them of His knowledge, made them the custodians of His religion, and bequeathed to them His book and the Sunna of His Messenger.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه من يوم والتعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والدفاع والإفادة والاستفادة وحثرة المسك والتعبير سنة السنة صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء على الهدى والدلالة على الغيب تقام وجناه ومضات يقول به ثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولا نقوة عظيم عدد كل أكتب أبد الأبدين والداهر الداهرين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من ذنوبنا وزنا وأذم وأتنا علي. اللهم أغنى من علم زين من علم وأكرمنا بالتقوى وَجَمِّلْنَا مِنْ عَافِيَةٍ يَا أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ يَا أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ يَا أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ. طيب, so he's picking up where he left off in the introduction of the complete summons by Imam Haddad. He says, these people of God, the scholars, the righteous scholars who have studied the religion, who have been taught it, who practice it, who have who have a relationship with their Lord, a positive relationship. These people, when they see this, when they see what society is like, he's talking about his time, okay? Imam Haddad said, which was hundreds of years ago, but it's applicable now as well. He's saying when they see this, the state people are in, where they're preferring to indulge in their desires and neglect the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, where they're content with being ignorant and not seeking knowledge or knowing their religion, where they are performing things that are sinful, okay, and okay with that. Observing all these things in people in society will urge these ulama or these scholars and callers to Allah Ta'ala and make them want to call them to Allah Ta'ala and reestablish the religion of God and help these people leave their heedlessness and enter the path of Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. This is if they're already Muslim. So what about if you live somewhere where you see people who aren't even Muslim? It'll further urge them to help them leave their disbelief and enter a state of belief in Allah Ta'ala and the messenger, His Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And all this is because, they'll expend their efforts and they'll work hard in doing this. Why? Because number one, Allah Ta'ala blessed them with knowledge, so they recognize the importance of it. They recognize, the reward in it, right? But secondly, that it's become obligatory upon them, either at an individual level or at a communal level. So what does that mean? So for example, a community, there's only a few people one or two people that know the religion of Allah Ta'ala well. They have to teach the others, right? So there's no one else who knows how to, for example, pray properly. Who's going to teach everyone else? Just that one individual that knows how to pray properly. He has to do it. There's no one else there, okay? And then if there's an instance where there are several people, okay, or many people who are qualified to teach and to spread the message of God, then the responsibility becomes shared amongst them collectively. Okay, they can split the responsibilities as long as this person specifically doesn't have to do it, but as long as one of them do it, then the responsibility is considered fulfilled. So in any case, when they observe the state of people, and they see what they're in, whether it's complete disbelief in Allah Ta'ala, complete kufr, or it's a state of heedlessness, this pushes them to act and to call them to Allah Ta'ala, because the obligation Allah has placed upon them due to their previous study and their what they've taken from their shuyukh or their teachers, okay, in terms of acquisition of the inheritance of the prophets, which is knowledge of the book of Allah Ta'ala and the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Let me keep reading.
He said, may God's blessings and peace be upon him. Scholars are the heirs of the prophets, for the prophets bequeathed neither dinar nor dirham, but they bequeath knowledge. Another tradition states that the scholars of my community are like the prophets of the children of Israel.
Yes, so they received an inheritance from the prophets, which urged them to call people to Allah Ta'ala. What is this inheritance? It's knowledge it's a knowledge that the Prophet ﷺ came with. It's knowledge of Islam. It's knowledge of halal and haram. It's this knowledge that was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ through wahi or through revelation by Allah Ta'ala through the angel Jibreel. There's a story of one of the Abu Hurairah, if I'm not mistaken. One of the companions of Tabi'in. He went to the markets after the Prophet ﷺ's death. After his death, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went to the markets of the believers and he shouted to them. He was calling them. He was saying, "O people, come to the masjid. The inheritance of the Prophet of God is being distributed." Okay? And the people were like, his inheritance is being distributed. Like, okay, we're coming. Let's go. Like, let's get a share. And they're thinking, inheritance in what? In terms of what? In terms of like money, because usually when we're talking about people leaving behind an inheritance, we're talking people leaving behind money or like land or wealth of some sort, material goods of some sort. So they arrive at the masjid and all they see are halaqas. People learning Quran, learning hadith, learning fiqh, learning different things in halaqas with their teachers. He looks around and they're all looking around. They're like, what are you talking about? Where is the inheritance? And he says to them, the one who called them said, this is the inheritance of the prophets. Look, they didn't leave behind, money for us to spend, okay, or land for us to use, to farm or to build upon, or food for us to eat. They left behind knowledge that we can use to better our relationship with Allah Ta'ala. So if someone decides to not take advantage of that knowledge and learn it, they've not taken advantage of their inheritance that the Prophet ﷺ left for them. And this is open to anyone. Anyone can just come and learn. There's no admission price. There's no you must be this tall to enter. There's no you have to be this old or this race or this that or this gender. No, anyone who wants to come can come and receive their acquisition or their portion of the inheritance of the Prophet ﷺ, which is the knowledge of this religion. So he says in the hadith, the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. The prophets did not leave behind any sort of money, gold or silver, dinars or dirhams. Verily left behind knowledge. In another hadith, he says that the scholars are like the prophets of Bani Israel. The scholars of this ummah specifically are like the scholars of Bani Israel. What does that mean? He's going to explain it now.
There used to be raised one prophet after another among the Israelites to renew the sacred law of Moses. May the best of blessings and peace be upon our prophet and him, to exhort them to uphold it, encourage them to implement it, and put fear into them of neglecting the commands of God and falling into his disobedience. This was through revelation from God, as will be immediately recognized by he who reflects on their stories and what has been said about them. This continued until Jesus, the son of Mary, may the best of blessings and peace be upon our prophet and him, was sent by God with a sacred law superseding that of Moses, upon whom be peace. But the Israelites denied and gave him the lie, also slandering his mother, may peace be upon her. Then there was a period without prophets, until God sent his slave and messenger Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the master of the children of Adam, with the Quran and the comprehensive sacred law, to supersede all that had come before it. But both the Jews and the Christians disbelieved and denied him, save those whom God willed. God made Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam the seal of prophets and the messengers, and he said, exalted is he, Muhammad is not the father of any of your men, but the messenger of God and the seal of prophets, and God has full knowledge of all things. Thus did God seal with him both the functions of prophets and messengers, making him the completion and perfection of all envoys. And just as he had made him the beginning and origin, in their end and seal, so that there shall be neither prophet nor messenger after him. He made by his grace, generosity, and favor the scholars of his community, who are his heirs and successors, and the carriers of his sacred law and everything of importance in his religion, to resemble the Israelite prophets from many or most aspects, but evidently not all, since there is no way to attain to the rank of prophecy, and none can hope for it after the messenger of God. May God's blessings and peace be upon him. The path to such a rank is closed, for it can never be attained by effort and striving, but only at the time and place where it is possible for it to occur. And these were before Muhammad was raised, blessings and peace be upon him, and before the functions of prophet and messenger. We're
So,
sealed within him.
so he said that in the hadith, the Prophet said that the scholars of his ummah are like the prophets of Bani Israel. Now, what does that mean, and how does that relate to what we're talking about in terms of da'wah? So Bani Israel, as we all know, were a people that Allah Ta'ala sent messengers to. Amongst them, Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. Amongst them, Sayyidina Dawood alayhi salam. Amongst them, Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam. Amongst them, Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. Okay, and many, many more. Many, many more. So Allah sent to them what He calls Rusul or messengers, and He sent to them what He calls Nabis or Anbiya or prophets. So what's the difference between the two of them? Every Rasul, every messenger is a prophet, but not every prophet is a messenger. Okay? A messenger is someone, the Prophet that Allah Ta'ala sent, that brought a new code to the people, a new set of laws, a new code of conduct to the people. Okay? So Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam came to Bani Israel and he was given the Torah, a book that had a code of conduct, that had rules for the Bani Israel to follow. So he brought this to the people. He was a Rasul. And then after he passed away, several other prophets came to keep alive that which he came with, the code that he came with. Okay? So, for example, after him came, like Sayyidina Yusha and other prophets of Bani Israel who would revive periodically the Torah, the teaching of the Torah and the teaching of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. Okay? And these were Anbiya or Nabis. Okay, so you have a Rasul who came with a new code of conduct or set of laws and regulations from Allah Ta'ala. Ultimately, everyone's calling to Islam and calling to Tawheed and calling to Allah Ta'ala, but we're talking about specific rules they have to follow. Every ummah has to follow specific, guidance of halal and haram, right? So when the Rasul would pass away or, move on to the next life, Anbiya or prophets come after him and keep his, revive the code of conduct or specific regulations that he came with. Because over time people would forget or become, lazy or become heedless. Okay? Or become heedless. This is the way it worked for Bani Israel, right? Prophet would come regularly and revive the Sharia of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam until Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam came and he brought his own code of regulations or code of conduct, okay, or Sharia. And that was in the Injil. And that abrogated the Sharia or the code of conduct and regulations of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. Okay? And so this is how it was for Bani Israel. People would come and revive the previous prophet's message, the previous messenger's message. But the Prophet ﷺ obviously was what? He was the seal of prophecy. He was the last prophet, and there's no prophet that's going to come after him. Okay? There's no prophet that's going to come after him. So the question now is, who's going to come and revive his message? Who's going to remind people about it when people forget, when people, become negligent, when people become heedless? There's no more prophets, right? Who's going to do it? This mission falls upon who? The scholars. When the Prophet says that the scholars of his ummah are like the prophets of Bani Israel, he's saying just like how prophets came after Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam to Bani Israel to revive his message, to revive the code of conduct he came with, to revive the teachings of the Torah, there will come people in the Prophet's ummah and revive the teachings of the Quran, to revive the teachings of the Prophet amongst the people after they've forgotten it or become heedless, to keep the religion alive. And these people, even though they're not prophets, because you can't just become a prophet, right? Number one, like no matter how hard you work, you can't become a prophet. Okay, and Prophet ﷺ was the last of the prophets. There's no prophet after him. Even though they're not prophets, okay, they hold, right, the mantle of prophets in the sense that they are reviving the Prophet ﷺ's message wherever they go and whenever they are, whichever time and era they come in, wherever they end up going, they're going to revive his message and keep it alive. So that's what the hadith means when he says that the scholars of my ummah are like the prophets of Bani Israel, meaning they will come over and over again, people who've studied my religion, the Prophet was saying, and they'll keep it alive and revive it. Okay? There's a really famous story of the great scholar and saint, wali of God, Abu Hassan al-Shadili. He had a dream. What did he see in his dream? he saw in his dream that the great scholar Imam al-Ghazali was with the Prophet ﷺ and with Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. Okay? So he saw these three people in his dream. Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, the Prophet ﷺ, and Al-Ghazali, Imam al-Ghazali, the author of Ihya Ulumuddin, Bidayat al-Hidayah, Beginning Guidance, and other books that you're all familiar with. He saw them three in a dream. And he's just like watching this interaction between the three of them. And what are they doing? So the Prophet ﷺ is basically showing the Ihya Ulumuddin, the revival of religious sciences, to Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, and he's impressed by it, right? So then Musa alayhi salam asks Al-Ghazali, what's your name? What's your name? Right? So he says, my name is, he says, Muhammad bin Muhammad bin Muhammad. He says, he mentions his own name, his father's name, his grandfather's name, right? Al-Ghazali. Okay? And so then Musa looks at him and he says that I asked you for your name. I didn't ask you for your dad's name as well, or your grandpa's name either. I just asked you for your name. But you said my name is so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, the son of so-and-so. Okay? Al-Ghazali. And Imam Ghazali pauses and doesn't say anything. He's being respectful to Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, the Prophet of God. And he looks at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, goes to him like this, like, okay, respond to him. Imam Ghazali then says, Ya Musa, Ya Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, or Prophet Musa, weren't you the one when Allah Ta'ala asked you, what's that in your hand? Right? When you first received revelation, Allah asked you, what's that in your hand? And you said, it's my staff. And you didn't stop there. You continued, you said, I shepherd goats with it, I do this with it, I do that with it. So Allah asked you, what's that in your hand? And you could have just said, it's my staff, but you chose to keep going and add a bunch of things that he didn't ask about, right? And so Sayyidina Musa smiled and he looked to the Prophet and said that. He said that you were right when you said that the scholars of your ummah are like the prophets of Bani Israel. So not just in the sense that they are, reviving the message, but also there's a meaning in this hadith that the prophets of the great scholars of ummah are in terms of, capacity and capability and intellect, mashallah, like prophets of Bani Israel. Like prophets of Israel. Obviously, we're not saying they are prophets. We're not saying that the scholars are prophets, because prophecy, there's no prophecy after the Prophet ﷺ. There's no one who is a prophet after the Prophet ﷺ. And prophecy is also not something you can acquire. No matter how hard someone works, they can't just become a prophet. They're chosen by God to become prophets, and Allah has said that there's no prophet after the Prophet ﷺ. But in terms of, we're talking about in terms of, a level of capability and a level of, bearing responsibility, that the scholars of Ummah are in fact like the prophets of Bani Israel, like the prophets of Bani Israel. Continue.
Since the matter is as you have heard and come to know, God raises in his Muhammadan community callers to guidance, renewers to invigorate that which has become threatened with extinction of religion, that which has been effaced of the landmarks of certitude, and those divine injunctions and prohibitions that have become neglected and forgotten. To this refers the following saying of the Prophet, and God's blessings and peace be upon him. God raises for this community at the head of every 100 years those who will renew his religion for it. Scholars, may God have mercy on them, have designated at the renewer at the head of the first century the pious Caliph Omar ibn Abdul Aziz, the Umayyad, the Qurayshi, may God have mercy on him. At the head of the second century, Imam Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi al-Muttalib, may God have mercy on him. At the head of the third, either Ibn Suraji al-Shafi or Abdul Hassan al-Ashari. At the head of the fourth, either Qadi Abu Bakr al-Baqillani al-Maliki or Sheikh Abdul Hamid al-Isfarani. Al-Shafi, al-Shafi'i. At the head of the fifth, the Imam, the Proof of Islam, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. Following these, there is disagreement as to the renewer of the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th centuries, which complete the 1,000 years since his immigration, may God's blessings and peace be upon him, with which the Muslim calendar was begun during the caliphate of the commander of the faithful, Umar ibn al-Khattab, following the suggestion of the commander of the faithful, Ali ibn Abi Talib. May God be pleased with him. May God be pleased with them. Also, as we have seen, there was some disagreement as to the renewal of the 3rd and 4th centuries. Al-Hafiz.
That's good. So now he's saying, okay, so we have these scholars who are entrusted with reviving the message of the Prophet ﷺ over and over again in the community, right, in the Ummah. There's another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ says, he says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْعَثُ لِهَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ مَنْ يُجَدِّدُ لَهَا دِينَهَا عَلَى رَأْسِ كُلِّ مِئَةٍ سَنَةٍ. He says, verily Allah Ta'ala will send someone to this Ummah to revive their religion every 100 years. So in general, the scholars of this Ummah are reviving the message of the Prophet ﷺ over and over again. But specifically, you'll find someone being sent by Allah Ta'ala every 100 years who has a very great role and a very great impact in reviving the message of God. Reviving the message of God and the message of the Quran. And this is according to this hadith. So, all the scholars participate in revival of the religion and keeping it and spreading it to people, but specifically an individual will come every 100 years who has a much greater responsibility and a greater impact in that revival. And this person, sometimes the scholars have agreed on who this individual could be for certain centuries because of the great impact they see in a specific individual. And a lot of times, which is often the case, they'll disagree upon who it is exactly, but the meaning hadith is sound. The meaning of the hadith is sound, which is that, an individual will come and have a great impact in reviving their religion every 100 years. Who exactly it is, it's not important. All that we know is that Prophet told us that an individual will come every 100 years, and they do come every 100 years. Here are some examples now. He says, for example, the first century, okay, after Hijrah, the great Khalifa, the pious Khalifa Umar bin Abdul Aziz, was one of the ones who revived the religion. Okay, he was a Khalifa, he was also a scholar, and he was also a very pious man. In the first 100 years after the passing of the Prophet ﷺ, he was one of the ones who revived the religion. And almost all the scholars agree upon that. Because of, number one, the great impact he had on the Ummah. He was a pious man. He was also the Khalif, and he was a scholar. And his justice was so great, and his spreading the message of God was so great. They say that they would collect zakah and they wouldn't find anyone to give it to. Because there was no poverty, there was no injustice. They would leave zakah on the streets, plus people just take it, but no one would come and take it because no one would need it. And they say that he was so just and the lands were so peaceful and tranquil during his ruling, okay, that the wolves wouldn't even eat the sheep. That even like wolves that normally come and eat sheep from a shepherd's flock, they learned adab and wouldn't steal people's sheep. So he was a great man, and he was, according to many scholars, the first reviver, so to speak, of the first 100 years after the Prophet ﷺ. And then they say in the second 100 years of the Prophet ﷺ, the reviver was Imam Shafi'i, the one who founded our madhab, Imam Shafi'i. And in the third 100 years, after the third 100 years, they began to disagree. Some say in the third 100 years, it was between a scholar named Ibn Suraj and a scholar named Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari. Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, he was the one who founded the school of thought we adhere to in terms of theology or tawheed. Okay? The Ash'ari school of theology that many of Ahl Sunnah and Jama'ah adhere to. In the fourth 100 years, it was between two scholars, one named Al-Qadi Abu Bakr al-Baqilani and the other one Abu Hamid al-Asfarayini al-Shafi'i. In the fifth 100 years, the 5th century, the reviver of the religion is almost agreed upon to be Imam al-Ghazali. okay, because of the great work he did. He wrote Ihya Ulumuddin, he wrote many other books. He had a very profound impact on the Ummah. And for that reason, for the 5th century, they've almost all agreed upon that he is the one who revived this religion. Okay? Now, they disagree oftentimes on who exactly is a reviver, like we said, but usually they have an idea it's one of a few people for every century, okay? And then Imam Suyuti has a specific opinion or interpretation of this hadith that he's going to mention now.
The Hafiz of Suyuti, may God have mercy on him, in commenting on the meaning of the hadith, stating that a renewal would be raised every 100 years, said that it was possible that renewal would be done by a number of leading scholars who accomplished the renewal between them. Both the wording and meaning of the hadith make this possible. However, since our virtuous ancestors designated only one person as renewer of the first centuries, even though they differed at times, we cannot take Al-Hafiz as-Suyuti's opinion for granted. It is now a long time since I have read his opinion, but this is what I remember of it, and God is the knowing, the aware. The aforementioned renewal is one of the attributes specific to this Muhammadan community, for there shall be no other prophet or messenger after his prophet. May God's blessings and peace be upon him.
So he's saying, okay, there's another interpretation of the hadith that Allah Ta'ala sent someone to revive their religion every 100 years. And this interpretation is held by a scholar named As-Suyuti. This interpretation is that Allah Ta'ala, that this revival of the religion, so to speak, doesn't have to be done by one individual. It can be done by a group. So you have a group of individuals who can be sent. Okay, a group of scholars are going to be sent every 100 years, and together they can revive the religion. So you might have someone, for example, in this part of the world, and someone else in that part of the world, someone else in the East, and someone else in the West, and collectively they revive their religion together all over the world. But they've done it, they shared the responsibility, and they might be even separated geographically. Okay, and this understanding is a sound understanding. The hadith doesn't, negate this understanding. Okay, and in a degree, in a way, it kind of makes sense because you have several people working together to revive their religion, okay, and teach the people every 100 years. And the author of the book is saying, Imam Haddad is saying, he's saying, classically, the pious, they've adhered to the idea that one individual is the reviver. The hadith is talking about one specific individual who's the reviver of the religion. But Imam Suyuti's opinion that you can have a group of people collectively sharing this responsibility and coming every 100 years and reviving the religion is not a wrong opinion, so to speak. It's not a wrong opinion, so to speak. But out of adab with this pious of the past and the classical opinion, he doesn't go into arguing for Imam Suyuti's opinion too much. He doesn't go into arguing for it too much. So we'll stop there, inshallah ta'ala, and we'll pick up tomorrow, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. And we ask him with the Fatiha that Allah ta'ala give us tawfiq to seek beneficial knowledge, and that He gives us tawfiq to act upon and accepts our actions, and makes us people who spread the message of Prophet all over the world and call people to guidance, and that He makes the Prophet happy with us, rewards our teachers, our shuyukh, our loved ones, and all those that rise upon us.